Thank you for joining the Change I Am Possible, which is India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Randheer Singh, who's the Director of Electric Mobility and Senior Team Member of Advanced Chemistry Cells Program at Niti Aayog, and he's working towards transforming mobility in India. So thank you for taking time and being part of the podcast. It's a really pleasure and honor to have you on the show. So can we start with a brief introduction on who you are, what you do, and your role at Niti Aayog?
Thanks, Eddie. Sure. Academically, I am an engineer from an NIT. I'm an MBA from IIM Calcutta. I have worked with the organizations like Hindustan Petroleum. I was the head of exports controlling with the Daimler India. I was also the CFO with the Volkswagen Group company, MAN Truck and Bus. I also had a short run as a management consulting startup I had run for almost 1.5 years. And then finally ended up as a director at the Niti Aayog in electric mobility. There I'm handling multiple projects ranging from the vehicles, infrastructure, standards, EV infrastructure standards. I'm also part of the BIS committee. I'm leading the Advanced Chemistry Cells Program in India, which is worth around 18,100 crores. I'm also leading the FAME2 program in India. And apart that, I'm also involved in the one of the awareness program that is called Shoonya, wherein we are working with the industry, almost 50 plus companies, including the Big Basket, Swiggy, Amazon, Flipkart, all are part of that. So it's end-to-end value chain of electric vehicles in India.
You are doing so many things. You're almost kind of laying down the foundation of what tomorrow's mobility of India could look like. The fossil fuel industry has created a lot of problem, if you might say. In India, we have around 22 of the most polluted cities in the world. So obviously, decarbonization of transportation, I think it's the utmost priority. Would you like to talk about how do we transition? What are the various problems? Because 1.3 billion people, it's not an easy solution.
You touched very right point. So there are three things why it is the transition to e-mobility is necessary for the country like India. Three big reasons. Reason number one, we have a lot of dependence. In fact, the crude oil worth 190 billion US dollar was imported in India in 2019. That's a big number for the country like India. So we have huge dependence on this fossil fuel. So the transport sector contributes almost 96 to 97% of the petrol requirement of total production in India. So the transport sector contributes hugely to this requirement. So we have to reduce our dependence on this crude oil, this fossil fuels. This is number one reason. Number two, 14 out of 20 most polluted cities as per the WHO report is in India. We have to reduce the emissions from the urban settlements. And the transport sector contributes to this pollution in a big way, mainly the air pollution. This is reason number two. Reason number three is India has already missed the manufacturing bus for the solar photovoltaic. Second, the electronics manufacturing. Now this is the sunrise sector. We cannot afford to miss this bus and lag behind in the manufacturing. So these are the three biggest reasons why India has to transition to this electric mobility or to the green mobility, so to say. The manufacturing is one of the biggest part on which the maximum thrust of the government is. And in fact, if you see India's largest two-wheeler manufacturer in the world, 81 in India, 81% of the total vehicle sale is only two-wheeler. That means we are primarily a two-wheeler market. That is the segment which electric mobility has, or the green mobility has to target number one. In fact, that's why the FAME2 policy, which has been launched, 15,000 rupees per kilowatt hour of the battery capacity is the subsidy, and 40% is the ceiling. So if your vehicle is costing say 1 lakh rupees and it is having 3 kilowatt hour of battery, you are going to get 40,000 rupees of subsidy because 40% is the ceiling. Over and above these policies, states also have their own policies because transport is a state subject. So you are getting the subsidy from the central government, and you are also going to get the subsidy from the 16 states who have already launched their policies. And in fact, rural areas, far off areas, this is the main means of communication for them. That's how they commute there. And now we have this solar charging infrastructure. You can charge these vehicles with the regular 5 ampere and 15 ampere plug, so overnight charging can happen. As per one of the survey, two-wheeler run maximum of 17 kilometers on an average in a day. That is on an average 17 kilometers. And generally the FAME 2 approved vehicles, they have the range of 80 kilometers minimum. That means you need not to charge your vehicles on a daily basis. You have to charge it after 3-4 days. So all these things together, the environment, the dependence on the crude oil, the requirement for the localization, the local employment generation, becoming the hub for the manufacturing of the EVs, all these requirements now mandates the country like India to not only focus, but they have to propagate this in a big way.
Yeah, there are these so many problems, and if we correct it, we could transition into the future of mobility, plus create an India which does its manufacturing over here only. And these are the problems that we ourselves need to sort. Now tell me, where does the problem lie actually? Because so far we are still, funding fossil fuel industries, because if you see, the government plus the banking industry is still funding the fossil fuel industry. How can we stop that, and how can we disincentivize these pollution creators of industries so that we can transition? What can be done about that? How do we address that?
You are very correct that how the funding in the fossil fuel based businesses should be lessened, and it should be moved on to the green funding. I would start with one point. In fact, I should have touched upon that earlier. So, there are reports of BNEF and all, and these reports come very often that battery prices in a decade has fallen down by 84%. You know what? These prices are not applicable for India. The reason being, the premise is minimum of 10 gigawatt hour of the factory, not even a 1 gigawatt hour factory exists in India for the cell manufacturing. So if they are saying $130, we'll be getting in India $190 to $200 per kilowatt hour. That is the difference we are having, 40 to 50% difference. And to bridge this gap, Government of India has launched an advanced chemistry cell program, as I already talked about, 18,100 crore. Once we will have these gigafactories in India, gigafactories is minimum, they have the economies of scale, entire supply chain built in and all. And they also bring the entire ecosystem around them. Not only the factory comes, but entire ecosystem. There is a separator, there is an electrolyte, there are binary, many other things. So this entire ecosystem develops and the funding comes. And all these gigafactories, they also help in the transition of, technological transition. Because we also need the technology. Whatever is going on around the world, we also need all these things. We don't have the time to invest in the R&D currently and get the fruits immediately. R&D takes decades to give the final fruits. So this is one step how the funding is getting attracted. Second part is we are working actually with the World Bank. So what is the biggest issue why people, if you, for example, today you want to buy an EV and you go to the market and you will ask them, okay, what are the facilities in terms of the loans and other things are available for you. You will be startled to find that you will be having a full credit history. You might be willing to give the collateral also. Then also the rate of interest might be more than the ICE vehicle. The reason being, there is no resale price available because the market is not there. But in case of the fossil fuel, that industry has developed over the 100 years.
Right.
Now, liability has been established. Now that resale price has been established. And that ecosystem has already existed. Because of all these issues, the government intervention is necessary because a lot of funding is required along with the private partners. Now, a lot of angel investors and others are also investing in the startups in the EV sector. In fact, a lot of funding is now coming in this particular sector, not only in vehicle manufacturing, but cells manufacturing, batteries manufacturing, infrastructure side, that is the charging infrastructure side also.
So you mentioned in India that the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, the most opportunity lies over there. Now the world obviously is completely changing, and like I mentioned in the beginning, it's transitioning so fast that it's very difficult for us to completely actually catch up. In Singapore, there is something called a Scarlight policy, which works for them because it's a small country. The vehicles are very expensive, and they have cities where they ensure that people walk, cycle, and so on and so forth. So it just becomes a little bit more better. We being 1.3 billion people, it's very difficult to look at that approach. What would be the right approach for a country like us to transition into a zero emission vehicles, and would mobility as a service play a role? Because I think the teens are no longer into, they're not attached to buying things, like how we used to buy things. We used to buy houses, we used to buy cars and things like that. They prefer Uber and so on and so forth. Would that be the future? What, according to you, who's been like the director of electric mobility at Niti Aayog, what is the future that you foresee for the mobility here in India?
Very right point you touched upon. So, the mobility as a service, it was gaining traction before COVID, I should say. So somehow it was an apprehension. It is an apprehension that people may not use the public transport as much as they were using pre-COVID days, or the way the CAGR growth in terms of the public transport adoption was happening may not continue. But in the last 1.5 months, the way the industry is changing and again coming back to the, I would not say normal, but it is coming back to the new normal, wherein the public transport, the usage of the mobility as a service, which we call MAAS, is again gaining the traction. And I see this is actually the future. That is why in most of the scenarios, most of the policies, government gives maximum impetus to the public transport. In fact, this fame too, when I talked about 10,000 crores worth of total outlay is there. Out of that, the maximum, more than 35 to 39%, has been given to buses, electric buses. And the focus is now on the 9 main cities with 4 million plus population. So these 9 million cities are going to be flooded with the electric buses in a challenge mode. The mobility is all about movement of the people from one place to another. It can happen by any mode. And the most preferred mode is the walk. Second one is the cycle. The pedestrian is the first mode. Second is the cycle. And the third one, I would say, is the e-cycles. The pedal assisted cycles. Now they have also come into India. In fact, Electro, Hero has opened one company that is called the Electro. After these comes the public transport. Then finally the two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and the private transport. So that's how I see, the preference order. And in the same preference order, even not only the government, but I would urge that private players should also work. That's how the mobility transition I see, not only in India, but of course, if you see the Scandinavian countries and all, they are moving exactly in the same hierarchy.
If we understand, if we take onus on ourselves that wherever possible, we understand that there's a carbon footprint of everyone, and if we try to reduce that, I think India will become surely like a global superpower. And I think public transport is going to play such a crucial role, mobility as a service. Once everything falls in place, I think the future of mobility will look super exciting. Would you like to talk about your implementation? You in the beginning, you mentioned about your Shoonya campaign and your chemistry sales program. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I would also like to talk about the decarbonization when I'm talking about the Shoonya. So, under the Paris Pact, India has the NDC targets, nationally determined contribution target, carbon. These targets every country has to fulfill to limit that 1.5 degree centigrade rise in temperature. India also has its share. So, Shoonya campaign is actually targeted in a way wherein we are incentivizing the companies, organizations in a non-fiscal manner. If we are partnering with Swiggy, for example, so now Swiggy is actually letting us know that they are going to convert their fleet in a particular time period. This much fleet is going to be converted into the green mobility. So number of kilometers traveled by them is equivalent to the reduction in the number of carbon equivalents from the ICE vehicles. That means this decarbonization of the transport sector has already happened in this way. If you are going to do this, at the time of the launch, 30 plus organizations were with us. Now 50 plus organizations are with us. So this is number one. Number two is, for example, you are going to take a ride sharing, say Uber and all. We are in talk with these guys. We are in talks with these organizations wherein they should have, the Shunya rides. Shunya rides means the electric vehicle rides. Most of the people they want to use these facilities. They want to contribute to the environment in one way or the other. And somehow this COVID has told us, and it has taught us that what is the importance of this environment for us. It's such a good environment. We don't want to pollute it further. So this through these campaigns and all non-fiscal incentives we give. So the brand certification program is also here. The brand is there. These people are going to give the options to the people that you can go for this type of ride. You can get the delivery done through the e-vehicles. They can charge the premium or some time, or even later on going on, they may even give you the lesser cost, because total cost of ownership of the electric vehicles is comparatively very less than the IC vehicles.
There are obviously quite a lot of challenges. Even the ones who have electric vehicles say there's the infrastructure problem, which is the biggest problem at this point in time. Besides the range anxiety, which I think, some of the biggest companies are trying to solve that. There are so many. There's battery swapping technology and so on and so forth. So shine some light on the current innovations when it comes to EVs. Talk to us about the problem points, and when are these problem points are going to be solved.
I would say the future is case connected, automated, shared, and electric. That is going to be the future. So in that, how I see that we as a country transition to EV, I would say the inflection point has already reached, because after these incentives from the government, fiscal and non-fiscal incentives, now in case of the majority segment, that is 84% two-wheeler plus three-wheeler, the ICE vehicles and the EV are at par in terms of the capital cost. And mind it, cost of ownership wise, there is a big difference, almost less than, the operational cost of the EV is around 30% compared to the ICE. So this is the inflection point. We are already at the inflection point. That's what I would say in case of the majority segment, 81% plus 3%, 84% of the segment. Regarding the range anxiety, I actually addressed this thing for this particular segment. If you are going to drive 17 kilometers per day on an average on two wheelers, and you are having 80 kilometers of the range. So for non-commercial vehicles in two-wheeler segment, you don't need actually the charging on a daily basis. You can do it overnight charging at home. You can do, we have also released the standards, BIS standards. You can do the charging at any 5 ampere or 15 ampere plug point. Going to the commercial segment, in case of the commercial segment, government has actually planned to put up around 200,000 of charging points, not charging station, charging points in these 4 million plus cities, so that the people can go and charge at any point. This is in addition to what private sector is also doing in a big way. In fact, the companies who are selling these two-wheelers, they are also putting up the chargers in a big way. Third part is the battery swapping. So a lot of battery swapping companies have come up in India. In fact, the biggest player in the world, what we know from the Taiwan, the Gogoro is also coming along with the Hero Electric. And I recently read the news that by 2022, even they are going to launch the vehicle also. When it gets adopted in a big way, this interoperability comes into play. It's like SIM card. You can have anybody's battery, anybody's charger. You can take anybody's battery, charge anywhere, and you have the flexibility to change the batteries as per your wish and the type of incentives these OEMs or the battery manufacturers are providing you. Next is the innovation. So in terms of the innovation, in fact, a lot of things are going on in the battery space. In 2019, the Nobel Prize has gone to this chemistry cells guys only. So Akiro and all. So that's why that much focus is there. In not only lithium-ion batteries, but sodium-ion batteries, aluminum-air batteries, supercapacitors, zinc-ion batteries. There are many chemistries which are right now being adopted. Solid-state batteries are there, which is being headed by the Indian only. So there are so many chemistries on which the work is going on, and most of these are the beyond lithium. That means some of these don't have even the fraction of the lithium available in them. So I hope I covered all of your points.
The startups and OEMs here in India are laying the foundation of the future of mobility. There are startups who are working on battery technologies, electric vehicles, and so on and so forth. Then there's this other bunch of startups who are thinking a little ahead. They are building autonomous vehicles. There are startups who are building level 1, level 2, and there are others who are even aiming at level 5 autonomous vehicles. Now, some of these deep tech startups who are actually looking at autonomous vehicles, they have this grouse that the investment community are very risk averse and do not invest in startups that are building for the future, that the autonomous vehicle, because their products would take maybe 10 or 15 years to actually materialize. But don't you think that we as a nation should be investing, supporting these entrepreneurs who are laying the future of mobility?
Currently, I would say there had never been a time that so much funding for Indian startups was flowing. Currently, there is no dearth of funding for these. In fact, the type of policies and the incentives provided to them, it's humongous. We have something called within the Niti Aayog itself, Atal Innovation Mission housed here, which is headed by the MIT person from the MIT. He has come here to India to head that. We have the Atal Tinkering Labs. We have these incubators in all the NITs, IITs, IIMs, and even the other private institutes also. A lot of funding is there, not only from the government, but the private sector also. So as far as the autonomous vehicle and the futuristic vehicles is concerned, see, India is, we have to see that it's not only about the domestic consumption. Of course, we are not ready even for the level 1 automation, automatic vehicle as of now, autonomous vehicle as of now. But then we have the market available everywhere. We provide the best of the minds available, best of the engineering available here. The skill set is available with the people here. The labor cost is also comparatively low with the other nations. Why? So the way we are right now in the IC vehicle segment, the hub of the the IC parts and the vehicles manufacturing, the same way we can transition for the EVs also.
So Tesla is launching in India, and I'm sure they've got big plans for India. Would you like to share some light on Tesla and the launch here in India?
It's a big market. Nobody can, not only can, but nobody should, leave this country aside from their market, from their business plan, I should say, because it's a big market. People are ready to, try out new things, adopt new technologies, and Tesla, of course, is a pioneer in the electric vehicle domain. So definitely, their presence is a sort of a symbol for the investors, for the adopters, and also for the consumers within our country, that how serious this technology is. This is a proven technology. People are investing. And when they see things flying like this on road, then definitely that consumer confidence and other thing builds up.
Thank you for being part of the podcast. Really appreciate you sharing your insights. My last question, if you had to paint a picture of what the future of mobility would look like, imagine yourself sitting in 2031. What do you think India is going to look like with the space of mobility?
2031, I would say at least 60% of new vehicle sales should be electric. That's what I see. Very, very pragmatic solution. So if I go to buy, any vehicle, the first thing the salesperson shows me is the electric vehicle, not the IC vehicle.
Thank you, Randheer, for ending on an optimistic note that in 2030 there'll be sales of possibly 60%. And I hope that there's more than that, because there's an urgent need for us to transition to cleaner energy, and electric vehicles could just be that catalyst, because the world is suffering, India is suffering. IPCC's recent report declared a code red for humanity. There is an urgent need for us to transition into a cleaner energy, and electric vehicle could be the catalyst. So I think we need to take onus, and possibly, maybe wherever possible, use our human agency or legs to walk, or maybe cycle, or electric cycles, and understand that we can make a difference. I would like to end the show with Mahatma Gandhi's quote: "You must be the change you want to see in the world." So if you want to see a better world, I think it starts from us. On that note, to my listeners, if you like what you see and hear, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, Randheer. Really appreciate this.